everyone, this is Chris Schmidt from Rocket Lasso, and we're back again, and this time we're going to be talking about the RKT Timer. Now, these videos are assuming that you've got the entire Rocket Lasso Field Driver bundle, which includes the Field Driver Tag, as well as the Field Pack 1, because in the future I hope to make more. So in this one, we're going to be talking about probably the most straightforward of all of our fields, and that is the RKT Timer. To show it off, I've got this gear here. I'm going to right-click on my object, add a field driver, and that field driver is going to create a timer automatically. Now, we can leave this in the hierarchy. We can pull it out. It doesn't matter where that lives. And you can see how important the timer is that we made it the default field that gets created every time you make a Rocket Lasso field driver. So what do I want to do? I want to drive a parameter, and this time I want to spin the gear around specifically on B. So I'll drop B on there. You see it has a letter B because it's driving B. And what is it going to do? Well, the tag is going to spin this around from 0 to 90, and it's going to do it via kind of traveling from 0 to 100% in this field. And the field, of course, is the timer. Now, how is the timer deciding what value it's outputting? Inside the timer tab, it is going to output 0 at the time of 0. And it's going to output 100% at the time of 30. This is automatically going to adapt to your timeline. So if you are maybe in Europe and your time code is 25, this should automatically snap to the time of 25 frames. So out of the gate, pretty straightforward. The timer already exists. If I hit play, this thing is going to rotate around, and every time we hit another 30 frames, it's going to loop. So it's going 90 and then looping right back. So it's 0 to 90, 0 to 90. And right here, the field driver is giving us feedback that's saying 0 to 90, 0 to 90. Now, we got a bunch of different settings here. One is we can change the time. So I can say, okay, it's going to end at frame 90. So now you can see it's going to go a third the speed because time is going only a third of what it was a second ago, and it's going to travel real slow, but it's still going to loop and still going to pop. Now I can right click on this. It'll jump back to your default time. In addition to that, we could offset both of these times. I could say this is going to end at 60, but not start until 30. Now we are in loop mode, but that means it's not going to do anything for 30 frames because I said don't start until 30, and then it will start looping forever. So keep that in mind. Very powerful as a kind of one-shot timer. Now, moving on, we can change the time a different way. Right now it's taking 30 frames, but we got this handy button in the middle, and this is going to stretch the start and the end to match your timeline. So if I click on that, we're now going from 0 to 999. So of course, this is going to rotate very slowly, but it does just match the timeline, which often is pretty handy. I've just got it really long right now. Back to default, you can see it's rotating. We've got some settings like time offset. Time offset, pretty straightforward. We're going to make a duplicate of the field driver, but I want to copy the timer with it. So I'm going to put that back inside, and now I will copy one, and then this one I'll push further back. So I copied the timer so that I can run two different times on it. Otherwise, if you didn't copy the timer along with it, both of these tags would be viewing the same timer. And of course, a lot of power of a field driver comes from that type of thing. Anyway, I've now got the front one selected. You see that they're both identical. If I grab the timer and start pushing the time into the negative, that means it's beginning earlier. It's beginning even sooner, and that means it's ahead of the one behind it. If we push it further back, it is actually going to be delayed. It's going to wait a little bit longer, so it's actually behind the one that's behind it. So yeah, time offset, pretty straightforward. But then we've got override time, and I love sneaking the setting into every tool that I make, because if we turn this on, now you see time is not progressing on this gear anymore. I'll delete the second one because we don't need it. You can see time's not progressing anymore because now time literally equals whatever this value is. So if I start increasing this, you're going to see the time is going to start looking like it's moving forward. So we can change this to any value we want, and it's a way of remapping time. So we're not going to do the setting now because I'll probably save it for maybe the quick start or a tutorial, but we could drive time using a RKT Noise, or you could drive time with a different timer. It's the ability to remap things and get really cool progression of all of our different settings. So yeah, super love putting this time offset into things, but you'll see cool applications of that in the future. So let's get rid of that. Now you'll see in our playback that we're set in loop mode, and maybe it's been as annoying to you as it is me. This has been popping because we're only rotating, and you'll see here, we're only rotating 90 degrees. So inside the timer, what are some ways we can fix this? Well, the main one is we can say that this is going to be cumulative. So instead of it going from 0 to 30, as soon as it gets the end of its animation, it's going to continue going even further. So you see this is now just rotating forever. Even though Field Driver said only go from 0 to 90, it's still spinning and spinning. You'll see when the time resets that our feedback is going straight past 100% and is continuing. So essentially it takes 0 to 30 to go to 100, Then 30 to 60 goes to 200 and so on. It will just keep adding and adding and adding, but we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So currently we're in loop mode and it's back to popping at 90. Now currently it's set to 0, a count of 0, and that just means it'll go forever. But we can say actually only do it 3 times. So now it's going to rotate, pop, pop, and done. It spun 3 times, it executed 3 times, and now it's not going to repeat anymore. Next up, we have once. So if we click on once, it's going to play exactly 1 time, and it's done forever. It starts at 0, and it ends at 30. So anything before 0 is at 0%. Anything after 30 is at 100%. So that's actually really powerful, and we'll see some applications of that in a moment. And then our last one is yo-yo. So if we click on that, and let's put this back to 0 so it's forever, you'll see it'll take 30, in this case, 0 to 30, it'll take 30 frames to go forward, and it's going to take 30 frames and then travel down. So it's going up and then back, forward, backwards. So you get this nice, perfect loop going forever. Now, only loop actually has the cumulative mode, so keep that in mind. But we've got some other settings here, mainly the spline. So, of course, it's really powerful. We can select our different points on the spline, and we can remap this, and you can get very different shapes for the way this is going to travel. But we went and put some nice presets in here that make it really quick to modify this. So first of all, you can see the handles already are applied to these points. You get these nice curves, which I like having by default. But if I were to pull this over here, you're going to get kind of a ease in, ease out almost. And oftentimes I just want that to be like this snappy linear. So I'm going to turn that off, or I'm going to click this first button rather. And now these are hard edged points, and I can move this over, and now you see that there is no easing at all. So those handles just go away. We can bring back the curves, and now you can see that it's nice and curvy. We can change this to a bell curve, so it's going to go up and then down. We can grab this kind of bounce shape, so it's going to go forward and then back, a really kind of fun bounce right there. Of course, a sine wave. We've got a sawtooth, so it's going to pop, 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 just alternating between those 2 values. An ease in, an ease out, and then an ease in and ease out. So just some little handy presets. Any of them you can click. I'm going to click in the window, hit Control or Command A, select these handles, and now I can move them around. And you can see I can reshape this however I want just to get whatever curve, and instantly click on any of these and pop to those. So those are the basics of the timer, but there is so much more that you can do. First of all, this is just mapping 0 to 100. So we can go back to the original tag and say, okay, that'll be 360. Of course, it's going to spin faster, but now you can see it's spinning around continuously. So that could be nice. So now we can go back into our timer and say, okay, that's going to spin around 360, which is lovely, but I want that to take a lot longer. So we'll say 90 frames, so it slows it down, and it's going to loop continuously. Now, it's not additive, so it's technically hitting 100 and popping back down to 0, but at 360, it just looks like a perfect loop. But we could turn on cumulative, and it will just keep on adding the values up and up and up. Now, it's pretty fun to do these curves here, where you're going to see that it's going to spin up and then slow down, and then speed up and then slow down. It's going to keep on going up and up and up forever there. So putting these curves in is really powerful. The important thing to note is they're going to be continuing from wherever the final point was. So if we were to, say, sneak in an extra point on this line and then grab this one and lower it, we can actually make our animation backtrack a little bit. Let's calm these handles down just a little bit. So now you can see it's going to spin forward and then rewind, and then spin forward and rewind, but there's no pop. It's almost like that next loop will start from there, but that is going to begin from up on that one. So imagine this shape repeated again and again, but that arc being on the previous one. So yeah, really handy to be able to loop these around. Okay, now let's go and talk about the ability to actually apply this to a cloner or anything that's involved with MoGraph. Very important. So in this case, let's keep it real straightforward. Make a cloner. Inside the cloner, I'll make a sphere, shrink that down a bit. Let's make a bunch of copies. 11 by 11 there. Just make a bunch of them. Cool. And now I'll make a plane effector. And the plane effector you can see right away is pushing everything up into the air. Let's grab the property, and it's just, see, it's applying everywhere. It's full power. Now let's go into our field. Of course, you can apply anything in the field that you want, but let's add in our same timer, the exact same one we already were using. So there's the timer. We're outputting these times. And for now, let's go and set this to be nice and simple, linear. And it's going to take 90 frames. So if I hit play, you'll see that the value that was there is going to take 90 frames to get applied. It's also changing color. We'll talk about that in a moment. So right now it's set to loop cumulative, And we'll talk about that moment. Turn off cumulative, and now you're going to see it's going to go up and then pop down. It's just looping again and again and again. But we already know from our field driver that it's going to be looping around. So let's go into the timer again. And this time I'm going to say cumulative, but you see it just stops. Why does it just stop dead? Well, it's stopping because the plane field has a clamp turned on. All the cinema effectors have clamps on. Turn off the clamp. Now it's not going to stop from 0 to 100. It can go beyond. So now you'll see this will just keep going forever. Putting back an interesting shape, let's go and grab our ease in and ease out. And now you can see it's going to go up and then go up again. Let's shorten our timer back to 30 so you can see this a little quicker, so we can see it go up and then up and then up. So yeah, working great. This is just a timer we can apply to anything. This can apply to any field. So let's delete that plane field, select the cloner, and then make a random. So here's a random. So this is going to apply to the position of that random. Let's feed in the timer, and this should be pretty nice. If I hit play, you're going to see they all spread out, and then they spread out. Let's make sure that is again, all of the cinema fields and effectors are clamped. So let's turn that off, and now you can see that it's looping and it's additive, so it's going to keep on adding and adding and adding. So yeah, really, really powerful there. Delete the effector, delete this. Actually, let's stick with the cloner for a second. Hitting NA, I'll get rid of those polygons in the viewport and make another plane effector. This time, instead of affecting position, let's just do the color mode fields color. So inside of fields, let's go and let's make a brand new one. So I'll make a brand new rocket timer right there in the first menu inside of the field objects. That's going to create it. And you can see it's affecting the values and the color. So what I want to do this time, if we hit play, you're going to see that the colors are changing, and they're changing because every field, but including the rocket timer, you can see that we have a color remap. And right now it's this blue. We can set this to any color. You can see it's going to fade up to that color over time. So that's great. But what I'd like to do is change our color mode from color to gradient. And now you see it's actually traveling through this gradient. So from 0 to 100%. Now, if we scroll down, I can say load preset and load in any preset I like. So I'll scroll down and grab one of my custom crazy neon colors. So I got these neon colors, and you see it's just traveling straight through. Going back to our timer, I could say, okay, that's going to take 90 frames to travel through. So you can see just the colors slowly changing over time. Then we can say that should only do it once, and now those will play through. One time we get all the colors, and it'll just end on the final bit of the gradient. And now it's stopped. It's not going to continue. We could remap it with some other arc, which is going to mean that, and let's loop it. You're going to see that we're going to get that green a lot more often because that green is on the ends of that gradient that we have. Let's go back to the color remap. So you can see, yeah, it's going to hang out more near the ends because of my ease in and ease out, very little in the middle. See, we travel through that kind of pink purple really fast. Back to our timer. Let's go back to linear. So that's the color working really well on there. So now I think we can delete our plane and our cloner. And let's go back to our gear here. And there's one last thing I want to show you with the timer that's pretty handy. And that is, let's make ourselves a brand new timer again. That's spinning around up to 360, but I'm going to drop that back down to the annoying 90. So now you can see it's popping. It's doing its own thing. Now, technically, you see it's blending mode max, but max will still work if it's not on top of anything else. Clicking on our timer, I would like to change this to, let's do the ease in. So you're going to see we're going to get kind of the snap, snap, snap. And actually, maybe I'd like the gears here to rotate a little bit differently. So I'm going to say, instead of rotating 90, I'm going to say rotate 60, which is exactly kind of one of these teeth. So you can see it is resetting. It's just kind of lining up really nicely. But you can see from the center symbol, the links, that it's not looping perfectly. So now with that in mind, let's turn on cumulative again. So now it's going to be adding on top of it. So you get rotate, 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 working perfectly, exactly what I want. We can see this going up, up. So that looks great. But now, again, the power comes in layering things. Fields are powerful because you can layer them up, and that's what makes Field Driver powerful. And what makes the Rocket Field Pack powerful, combining with all the MoGraph stuff, is you can layer things. So with this timer, I can move inside of my field list here and create a new field. And this time, let's make a delay. And you're going to see me use this all the time because I love combining this with our various fields, especially with stop motion. But you'll see that in the future. So I'll make a delay. And this delay, I'll say, yes, it's only affecting the value. I'll set these both to normal just so it's clean. But now you can see it's taking the edge off of it. It's not so snappy. If I turn off the delay, it's a really hard hit. Turn on delay and smooth it out a little bit. Let's lower that value. And now you can see it's just going to take a little bit of the edge off. But where that gets really fun is not delay in smooth mode, but delay in spring mode. And now you can see that this object, just with a timer, is now getting this lovely spring animation. I didn't even have to put that into it. We could have customized our spline in the timer. I could like do this and do this and do this and kind of add some springiness in there manually, but we don't need to do that. We can just do this nice harsh ending. And on that harsh ending, we're going to do a little spring effect here. And now we get that spring. Now we can crank it up higher to be like really wiggly. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. But we could layer and layer and layer. We could put some smooth and then some spring and then, and then some stop motion. We can layer and layer on top of each other. So that type of stuff gets really powerful. There's one last thing I want to show using timers and Field Driver, although this would also apply to a lot of cloner type setups. And that is going to be the ability of stacking up several different timers to do different things. So for now, I'll just turn off this delay. But let's say that we want, actually, no, I'll keep that on there. So we got our base tab and it's going to rotate 60 and it's going to do a loop of 30. So we get that same jiggle. Everything's going to be working fine. But I'm going to say, I want this to only play 3 times. So I'm going to hit play and we're going to see it's going to rotate. It's going to rotate. It's going to rotate and then be done. It's never going to play again. Now we could modify that and say, actually, don't start right away. So wait until frame 30 and then play until 60. So it's going to do 3 loops, but it's going to wait for 30 frames. So hit play again. It waits. And then it's going to do 3 hits. So, yeah, perfect. But then let's make a second timer. I'm going to make a second timer here. And this time, we could just drop it in here, which is totally valid. But what I like doing is making a second tab, saying new tab, and let's drop in our second timer. The second timer is going to do some other animation. So it's going to rotate how much? I'm going to say I want you to rotate 360. And when do we want the timer to go? I'm going to say play exactly 1 time. Start at frame 100. And at frame 100, I want you to take, let's say, 200 frames, or another 100 frames. So from 100 to 200, I want to spin around, and we will ease in and ease out. So if we hit play, it's going to begin, and it's going to spin, clunk, clunk 3 times. And then starting at 100, it spun 360. Let's actually delay that a little bit. So I'll type in 120 and then even 300. Just slow that down a little bit. Let's let that loop. So now clunk, clunk, clunk. And now it's going to begin a 360 rotation that's easing in and easing out. And then it stops. And because we said to only go once, it's going to be done. So we can create complex animations by layering up timers like this. And by using multiple tabs is really nice because the tabs are additive. So I could say add another 360. Now, I could say actually go from 0 to minus 360. And now that would spin the opposite direction. You're going to see it actually rotates back the other way. So a lot of power to go and modify these to do all sorts of crazy animations. And of course, when it comes to something like the timer field, it's all predetermined. So, well, I guess that delay could be slowing things down a little bit, but I can jump to these different times. And the timer is always exactly precisely where it should be. Hitting play, it's going to do the exact same thing again. So completely predictable. So the timer, hopefully very straightforward. That's the goal. This is a really straightforward tool, but very powerful. A lot of things that we can do with this tool. So I think that's going to wrap this one up, and I'll see you in the next video where we are going to be talking about the RKT Noise. Bye-bye.